Hello to everybody and welcome to Therapist in Conversation. And I've been doing this so long now that I can't remember which episode it is, but it might be number 6, not sure. And so you'll recognize, those of you who viewed before, that we have a few new people here. And one of them is a whole new, different thing altogether. It's a man. There's a man. Fox in the hen house. Let's see what happens. So, now, Victoria and Irene are our latest conscripts. I've shanghaied them in here tonight. And I think they've got some wonderful stories to tell. And Victoria is a drama and movement therapist. And Irene works with people who have been in narcissistic relationships. So the power of belief, which is the subject of this particular broadcast, is going to be quite an interesting one. So before we do anything else, let's have a quick round of hellos, since we have some new people, and let everybody know who we are. Start with Sue.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Sue Winsbury, the Energy Queen. So I work with spiritual and spirited entrepreneurs building energetically aligned businesses and without burnout. So I'm very passionate about preventing burnout, chronic fatigue, tipping people over the edge.
Angela.
That's me.
Thank you, Sue. Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela and I am a health kinesiology practitioner, so working with energy-based therapy to work with a whole variety of different conditions and stuff going on in people's lives, whether it's physical, mental, emotional or spiritual. We can really help make people feel better.
Cool. Okay, Vonnie, you're up.
My name's Vonnie and I'm CEO of APA, a new accreditation membership organisation. I've also been a qualified counsellor since 2003. I practice psychotherapeutically. I love my vocation. And David is the MD of APA, so we're working this one together, just so that you know.
So, David.
Okay, so I am Dave Sleet, as Vonnie says. I'm the Managing Director for APA. I'm also a qualified life coach, have been since 2006. And before that, I was a corporate trainer in the hospitality sector. And I spent a total of about 20 years in and around the hospitality sector, crossing over from pre-coaching to coaching.
There's a lot of psychology in hospitality, that's for sure.
Especially at the moment.
Oh, yes. Victoria.
Hi everyone, my name's Victoria. I'm a recent graduate from Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and I'm a drama and movement therapist. During my training, I've had a wide range of experiences working with different client groups, mainly children and adolescents in schools, and also NHS mental health as well for adults.
Groovy. Irene.
Hello everyone, so my name's Irene and I am a life coach for women leaving narcissistic relationships, and I use coaching and NLP to help them regain their confidence, rebuild their lives and to get their self-belief back again and their self-worth.
Okay, so Irene just touched on it there, the belief word, the B word for this evening. Now, belief is a most interesting thing. I think it's one of the most foundational things of our behavior, of our understanding of our realities and how we make it. So I'm going to put this question out. How powerful do you guys believe belief actually is? Start with Sue.
Immense. Our beliefs are, I think, if everyone understood the power of their beliefs, then they would probably think in very different ways. I always refer people back to Dr. Bruce Lipton, who obviously did some wonderful research and studying into the power of beliefs and how much it affects your physical body, every single cell, the way your body behaves, but also for me, your energetic body as well. So when you kind of look at like the law of attraction, the energy that you put out, your beliefs impact that as well. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, beliefs are huge.
Cool. Angela?
It's pretty much everything, right? It's what's going on in our heads, it's how we think, it's how we process, it's how we live our lives. So yeah, the power, I think, is the everything.
Okay, which one of you two is going to go first?
Go on.
Well, I'll go first on this one, and I know Angela and Leslie and Sue know a little bit more about me than the other two newcomers tonight, but I am in remission from colon cancer, and it was my belief of my inability to control the situation that actually got me through what I went through in ways that even I found completely profound at the time. So for me, belief is, as Sue and Angela have said, it's beyond the pale incredible as to how it can impact on you based on how you use it, how you view it, how you feel it, and what you do with those beliefs. So for me, it's extensive, and it also saved my life. So I hang on to belief like you wouldn't believe.
Well said. Dave?
For me, I think belief is the foundation of for the structures that we all use in everyday life. Whatever is coming to us, whatever the world is throwing at us, our belief systems, our knowledge base, the stronger and wider that is, the more we are able to cope with the world around us. And it is that foundation kind of building block, if you like, to our own resilience for the world around. Okay,
thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, just kind of echoing what you said, Angela. It's kind of like everything in our lives, everything around us, how we see the world. But also for me personally, I think belief in ourselves is a big thing. And I think, yeah, just the way society is, we sometimes lack belief in ourselves. Like, you may have people around you, like your loved ones, say, oh, I believe in you. But if you don't have that belief in yourself, then you're not going to push past certain obstacles. And I speak very personally from that. You know, I had an obstacle in my life. I thought I was going down one career path and it didn't work out. So for a while, I didn't have any belief in myself. But then I thought, actually, no, I can do this. And that belief then got me into Central, which to this day, I'm really proud of. And now I'm a qualified drama therapist from it. So yeah, I think belief in ourselves, we sometimes have to just delve right into our own selves and just unlock that belief a bit more. I think that's just me personally, I think, what it means.
And Irene, you must see some interesting belief systems going on.
I do, and I've had some interesting belief systems myself. And that's the great thing about beliefs, is that they're, in some way you could call it flexible, so you can change them. And that's the best thing about them, and they're not always negative ones as well. There are obviously the positive ones that we have, but those negative ones and all those beliefs are just at your core, aren't they? That's kind of what we operate from every day, is what we believe in and what we think or perceive we know to be true.
That's the word, perceive. Because for me, beliefs are an amazing cornucopia of interesting things that, yes, thoughts become things, and our belief system is full of the thoughts that make those things happen. And it's one of the situations that we can find ourselves in at early age, is that we start by taking on, by modeling, and by actually wearing the coat of someone else's belief. We're taught that. It's a construct to a certain extent. And until we get out from under that and start going out into the world and exploring beyond that belief, many of us will never have another belief set in our lives. We'll stay inside that very protected wall. So I'm interested at the moment to find out how we think people's beliefs at the moment have been challenged, are being turned on their heads, and how many people are now, do you think, walking forward with a whole new set of beliefs? So let's start that one with Angela, because I know she loves to go first.
Thanks. Do you know, I don't know. I think there's so many different variables just now, and some people don't feel as if there's any change whatsoever. Some people are looking at what does their life mean, what's going on, are they able to leave their houses, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's one of those ones. It's so individual, and I don't think I would want to put a sweeping statement over everybody from what I've experienced and what I've seen. And I guess that maybe the difference is between who's watching the news and who's not.
Mm-hmm. And how they're internalizing it.
Yeah.
Sue?
Yeah, it's quite a big subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
Glad it wasn't just me that thought that.
Kind of, I think this is not the place to get on my soapbox.
Well, you know me, I do like to put the stick in the hornet's nest and let it go. You know, it's like.
But I do think, I think a lot of people are having their beliefs seriously challenged. Beliefs in perhaps ways and forms that we might have trusted in the past, like how we're being looked after by our governments or our countries. I think for some people that is being challenged. I think for others there are unearthings of ideas that perhaps they find very unpalatable and don't want to believe, but are having to confront and see that they've got to start believing in different things. So I think there's a lot of challenging belief work coming up on very personal levels about what we've always thought was true for ourselves, our futures, our families, but also on the bigger, wider scale. And do I want to believe all this stuff or don't I?
Cool. Irene?
I love that what you said. So that it is true that not everything, but things that people have believed in for so long are changing now. So for a lot of people, things have changed, and it's again that thing that goes down to what's at your core, and what you believe is not as you thought it was, that it's now turning into something else. And I think the sudden changes that are going on at the moment that are causing people some anxieties and the uncertainty and not knowing. And when we believe something, we feel it's certain and that's what we know. And then all of a sudden it's rocked, and that causes unrest.
It's the correlation between the word belief and truth. That's the interesting juxtaposition that you find yourself in at the moment, I think. What do you reckon, Dave? I saw your head nodding there, so I'm going there.
I think there is an even wider challenge. As professionals, we are invariably confronted by people that have that clash between what they thought they believed or what they'd been told and what they'd understood and what they'd grown to know to be their truth has now been questioned. And then they come to professionals and say, I'm not sure where I sit with this now. But when we look across the globe, we see more and more people who are saying, no, this is what the truth is. And they hunker into what their belief was before all of the chaos erupted. And they hold on to that kind of core of, this is what I know, this is what I've been told all of my life, and this is it. And everything else can go into the woods and die quite happily. Thank you very much, because I'm holding on to that coat, as you described it, Leslie, that they've had all of their life.
It's very much like going down with the Titanic, playing the music while the Titanic sinks to a certain extent. With a lot of it.
There are going to be those people that are so fearful of their perception being altered by the world around them. So they will hold on to that life jacket and go, I'm going to sit here and listen to the music because my life jacket will save me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, more people drowned with life jackets on the Titanic than were saved. So there is, I think, a real wave coming for professionals when that final kind of grouping, if you like, hits that realization that the world has changed?
Yeah. Vonnie?
Well, I would say our beliefs are now a grief process. And I say that because there's so much loss of belief. There's loss of belief in the government. There's loss of belief in what's normal, if you like. There's loss of belief in yesterday. There's loss of belief in tomorrow. The truth of the matter is, and I picked up on what Angela said, I avoid the news at all costs, simply because I know the level of confusion that you pick up on the snippets, and you pick up on how everybody's feeling. Everybody has lost their stability. There literally is no stability in tomorrow and what's coming. Nobody knows what's coming. So for me, that belief system is actually turning into a grief system, because we're grieving what was yesterday and not knowing what's coming tomorrow.
Yeah. Victoria?
Yeah, it's just such a big subject, and yeah, just listening to you all, you've all got such really interesting points. And I think what's coming to my mind about, you know, sense of belief and your belief system, I think of like the growing child going into adulthood, or, you know, adolescent to adulthood, and like leaving the family home. And, you know, like you're brought up with these certain beliefs, and, you know, of your family, which is meant to be a very nurturing environment. You know, you're maybe brought up, for example, I've got a friend who is American, and she, you know, was brought up in upstate New York in a very conservative background. You know, they're very, like they've always voted for the same party all the time, very right wing. So she grew up to an extent believing this system, but then when she left that family home and began to, you know, educate herself on policies and government, what's right, what she feels is right and wrong, she went, well, actually what my parents believe, and, you know, she has loving parents, like she feels that their belief system is completely opposite to hers. And sometimes it's just that letting go of what you thought was your belief system, but coming into your own as well as an adult, and still keeping that relationship with that nurturing family. That's just something that came to mind, as sometimes our beliefs change as we maybe get older, and just move away and become more individual. That was just something that came to my thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's this acceptance of someone else's beliefs that can rub you up the wrong way like gritty sandpaper on a very tender spot. And it's one of those things that when we think about the power that belief holds over us, that we give it, basically, because we feed that power every single day. The power that it actually exudes over us is something that becomes a collective. And you get this kind of tribal, clannish thing that goes on. But even within that tribe and clan, there's going to be a spectrum of belief and how strong it is in certain places. When you talk about America, it being a two-party system, that is a really, really strong polarizing situation. And even although basically here, we really just have a two-party system with a little bit of side play on the edges, a bit of salad on the edges. Because we really only have these two powerful juxtapositions that we're going to be using for guidance. And if we don't like the leaders of that, we actually go not on the belief of our policies, but on whether or not we like them, trusting that, you know, that those that we like will actually do the job that they say they're going to do, which we know doesn't always happen. However, the thing is, it's the power behind the belief. It's the power of what we believe to be true. So when it comes to how we actually go away from that, and a story comes to mind about anemones, strangely enough, as it would with me. Anemones start their lives stuck to a rock in the middle of the sea. And at one point, they have to allow their babies to go into this great big ocean where they're going to get eaten by loads of different things. So there are millions of them to start off with. But what these little baby things are going to do is they're just going to go and find another rock, but it's going to be in a different part of the sea, and they're going to have similar but not the same predators, issues, tidal movements, and all the rest of it. But they have to actually get on that rock and stick to it to survive. And I think that's what Dave was saying as well. It's the survival mode that belief brings. Where we are at the moment is that for a long time we've been happily ensconced in the idea that nothing can touch us and we're all right because we're human. And we've forgotten that actually, in order to get where we are in this lying on our laurels situation, is that we survived and we adapted, much like the virus does. So what we need to understand is how we get back to the balance of being able to survive and adapt, but not go straight back into the cave again. So thoughts on that? How do we think we're going to deal with people who are actually going from one extreme to the other? In that, you know, running about panicked, headless chicken kind of situation. What do I do? What do I do? What's going to happen? Dave, you're itching.
Something that I was taught a long time ago, or a phrase I was given a long time ago, that sums up human development. Adapt, overcome, survive. And one thing that in the last 70 to 80 years, the human species across the planet has almost forgotten is the ability to adapt, because we've survived. So therefore, we don't need to adapt anymore because we've survived. And if the current situation has done anything for a large portion of the population, it has reminded us that we have to keep adapting. We have to keep growing. We have to keep working out how to deal with these challenges.
Would you make a differentiation between adapt and adopt? Because we've adapted to technology to the point where it's put us dormant.
We've adopted technology as the solution, rather than adapted technology as a tool to keep growing and keep surviving. It's, you know, for me, and it's something that Vonnie and I have used in training sessions for the last couple of years now, is we are made up of psychological, emotional, and physical. But for the last 100 years or so, we've forgotten the emotional and the psychological. We focused on the physical development. That's all of our technological advances, all of our physical, medical advances. And we've left 2/3 of our entire being behind. And that imbalance is now coming back to bite us. And it's the emotional and the psychological parts of our humanity that we need most now, because without them, there is no physical solution to the current challenge. So our survival, we are only using 1/3 of what we have available to us because we've forgotten the other 2/3.
Yeah, I think that because if you don't use it, you lose it to a certain extent. I was just thinking about that earlier on because it was something that I've always said, and I tell the story of surgeons, and it's about compartmentalization. It's about focusing just on what you do, on that one thing, and expecting the other people to do the same thing, to understand that your focus should be their focus and their focus should be your focus. And it's about surgeons and operations. A surgeon can go into an operating theatre and perform an operation, come out and say to someone, the operation was a complete success. Unfortunately, the patient died. Now, what he's saying is that he didn't take into account the emotional stability and the spiritual ability and belief system of the person on the table, because all he was interested in was the mechanics, and he can fix the mechanics, but he can't do the woo-woo stuff. So he doesn't deal with it. But we all know that actually the most powerful part of the mechanics is the emotional and the spiritual, energetic side of the machine. Because without those two, as you say, 2/3 not paid attention to will actually take over, and the fear factor that will embroil within that can kill you on a table, or even before you get there. Now, that's the other thing I was going to ask people about, was fractals of beliefs that that we take on, perhaps as children. Vonnie, you and I have spoken about this before, how we talk ourselves into listening to the opponents that we have inside us, when we remember people telling us how bad we are, how unworthy we are, or that, you know, oh, that'll kill you.
Yeah, and I can honestly say my goal with everybody that I work with is to work on bringing them into the present rather than the future, because it's the future that results in the anxiety, the what if, what's going to happen, how are we going to manage this, da 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 da, and that can spiral people out of complete control, especially in the circumstances that we're in, because nobody has any control over this. So it's learning to bring back the control in our own mind, work on the present, and be incredibly aware of our lack of control over what's going on around us, but work on controlling ourselves, our minds, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, so that we can feel as much in control of ourselves as we possibly can, rather than, as we say in the therapy world, working from an inner locus of evaluation rather than an outer locus of evaluation. If we work on an outer one right now, we're evaluating ourselves on something that's not concrete at all. It's completely unstable. Whereas when we learn to work from the inside out, we can rely on ourselves, we can believe in ourselves, we can work towards what we need to work towards, and we can stop the anxiety spiraling out of control in every sense. But it takes discipline and it takes a lot of work to get there. So very easy for me to say out loud, but often takes a lot of work depending on those belief systems that have been created through childhood development. And they will play out at the moment for multiple different individuals.
Sue, energetically, that's about the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We know the history of individuals is based on their childhood development. So though it's almost like everything that's happening right now is a trigger for absolutely everything that many people have been through in their own history. Helping them work with their history as well as the present, and helping them process things, but being aware of what they're processing and keeping them in the present, which is obviously their work to do, but my work to help them get there and process and be aware of what they're doing. And I think that's something that I will always work toward, bringing people in the present and keeping the control over our mind, rather than actually in responding to everything else going on around us.
Okay. Energetically, Sue.
I always think it's really important to remember that the middle bit of belief is actually lie. And quite often our beliefs are lies. They're lies that we tell ourselves, they're lies that maybe other people have told us. We don't even know half the beliefs that we've got going on in our subconscious anyway. You know, we've got this whole container of all these random beliefs that are embedded in there and dictating how we behave and how we act and how we think and we feel, and it's just all stuck in there, which energetically creates a lot of lower vibrational energy, if you like. So I think I always ask people to kind of unpick their beliefs. So whatever, and I'm always doing this for myself, whenever I get triggered by something, to start looking at, like, okay, what's behind that? 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 And quite normally you get down to something completely bonkers at the bottom of it. It's just so stupid that you can go, well, this is ridiculous. I don't even need to hold on to this. But under learning to sort of go into the deeper realms of the beliefs will help unpick them and unravel them and shift them. And when we shift them, we can move our energy. And I think at the moment there's such a frequency out there of fear and anxiety and stress, and it's constrictive on an energetic level. It's very constrictive for every person that's experiencing that, and for all of us, because we all pick up on it. But that just kind of just depletes your immune system anyway. So the more we can expand our energy and make it stronger and more powerful and more vibrant and more like yoo-hoo, it's going to just help our bodies.
Cool. Angela, looking under that energetic rock and unpacking it until the molecular consistency of the case is absolutely no more is something that you and I have spoken about before.
We have, and I guess from the perspective of what I do, I don't need to necessarily know what the beliefs are for the client. The client might not even know what the beliefs are for the client. And trying to dig into that, how much of a can of worms are you actually opening? So energetically, if we can smooth the stress away and help people to actually work out what it is they want to believe, rather than trying to pull up old beliefs from decades ago, is that easier to cope with?
It's one of those things though, isn't it, that it's a case of you can't exactly just swipe right or left to get rid of this stuff. There has to be some kind of delving. There has to be a recognition that there is an issue.
There's a recognition that there's an issue, but not necessarily having to verbalise what that issue is.
Which is quite good, because sometimes verbalisation can be an interesting, let's say, challenge.
Because and again, as I said, if you don't know where that belief's come from or what that belief actually is,
because it's not always logical.
How stressful is it to try and unpick that and pull it out when you don't know what it is, where it came from, who gave it to you, what the logic behind it was when the belief was laid down. So I think for me, I like the way kinesiology works and the fact that we don't have to pull all that stuff out. We just need to know that there's a problem there in the first place, and energetically we work to clear it out without needing to.
That's another interesting thing about NLP, Irene. I'm assuming that you're going to be using this kind of situation whereby you only have to have one instance that the issue has occurred, and you collapse that, and then the wonderful universal mind collapses every other instance of that issue that there ever was behind it. So, which clears the decks quite nicely. A bit like a virus, actually.
Yeah, sometimes there only has to be one instance of something to trigger someone in the future, but sometimes it's a collective thing where you get the confirmation bias, where someone has to have 2 or 3 instances of a scenario before they deem it's enough to have formed a belief. So I think that we're forming beliefs as we live through every day. We're forming new beliefs throughout everything that's going on right now, and all those are going to be this. Yeah, like everyone else has said about triggers. There's a lot of triggers around at the moment from past experiences, and yeah, sometimes we don't know where they come from, but it's definitely working to try and treat those and to try and change them into something more positive, and not necessarily always knowing where they come from, because like Angela says, we don't always know where they come from, and there's going to be quite a fallout from it, because there is that thing where the mind controls so much of the body as well. So we're going to see a lot of physical ailments come from this, as well as emotional ones.
Yeah. And Victoria, you and I spoke briefly recently about the fact that we're holding these things in different places and spaces in our bodies. Because part of my work as well is about shifting things from where we're holding it. And it's actually quite enlightening sometimes to discover where we're holding it. Because that can be an eye-opener for a start. But what you're going to be doing, what you've been taught to do, what you're qualified in, is actually shifting that energy by movement and acting it out. So it's more a practical rather than on the surface energetic way of dealing with these little clumps of gunk that we've got stuck. I love that word.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, sometimes if I've been with a client, particularly when I was on placements and things, you know, at the beginning I might, because drama therapy is very much the oblique approach, like it's all through metaphor, we don't necessarily sit and talk for a full hour, even though I have had sessions like that, and that's been just as beneficial as, you know, acting out a story for an hour session. But, you know, sometimes when a client can come in the room and they're maybe sitting a certain way, like I can tell like in their body that they're holding something, and I might say, oh, you know, is there a certain part of your body that feels quite funny today, or is there anywhere that feels tense? And they might then say, oh yeah, like my shoulders are really tense. And so that even just doing that can like release whatever it is that they are holding, and then that can move on to a bit more of a movement based session. And it's just really quite powerful to see the body do that. And also I'm just thinking of, as you're saying, of what's going on in the world right now, and you know, our energetic feelings around things. I'm just noticing a lot at the moment as well, because I'm thinking that, you know, for the majority of this year so far, like from March, we were, you know, told to stay in, like lock ourselves in, don't go out. And it feels like it's going that way again, because we're being encouraged to work from home as much as possible. I do kind of think, well, what's that doing for people that live on their own? And having seen a family member recently who was on their own for a lot of lockdown, they struggle to interact with everybody else in the room. So if there'd be a room full of people and they would just like shut down. And I just wonder if energetically what's going on at the moment has made us more closed in on ourselves and struggling to reach out for that human connection, which I think is really important in general, like for our well-being, just to have that connection. And, you know, simple touch with people. Like I do wonder, is shaking hands going to be a thing of the past once we come out of this? And also with what I do as well, like, you know, touch is a big thing in drama therapy. You know, you might go like, you know, do this with clients, and you might touch hands and do like almost a little dance together. You know, I wonder how comfortable is that going to be in the future for the clients as well as us therapists. And yeah, it's a big question I think a lot of us have.
Yeah, I have movie reels going through my head
and
from all these 70s disaster and dystopian movies that I think we've had too much of a banquet with over the last 40 years or so. And that it's actually trained us to look at that and go, yeah, I recognize this from that. Yeah, I recognize, you know, that could happen. And guess what? Here we are.
It's also, does it not also show how we've been conditioned to focus on the physical rather than the other two elements of our humanity?
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else, Dave. I'm kind of seeing a correlation between the amount of zombie movies and programs and the amount of zombies that are walking about with phones in their hands, not actually thinking of anything, but just trusting what comes out of the phones. You know, and that's feeding a need. So we have to understand what that need is, and they believe everything they see out of their phones.
Yeah, and that's the physical connection. It's a physical, it's giving me something right now. There's no emotional connection, there's no psychological connection.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting is the fact that with all the people with things like body dysmorphia, when they're having to sit with themselves and they don't even know who they are, they don't even know because they've never actually wanted to sit with themselves. They don't like themselves very much, and they're strangers to their inner self. Being in this situation where they're being forced to actually be more involved in who they are, sometimes it's going to be them in a mirror, and they're really going to start not liking even more what they see.
And it's that imbalance between our public presentation that social media has driven for the last 20 years and our private presentation that we have to ourselves when the lights are off and there's no one else around has become so separated. Everything else is out of balance, and these two entities just cannot coexist any longer. And that emotional void and the psychological void that physicality has created stems all of the, you know, if you like, the poisoned fruit that we have grown across humanity over the last 30, 40 years.
The interesting thing is also, though, when we're talking about on the surface stuff, we actually have built 2 or 3 generations now of people who just take things from the surface and don't understand where it comes from. And that's an analogy basically of the belief system as well. We don't know where it comes from, but we'll take it as read. That's it. That's a belief, that's a value. And like Sue said, half of us don't even know what most of them are, where they come from, or, you know, and the only time that we actually realize they're there is when somebody stands on its toes. Then it starts up, whoa, hey, no, you're not doing that. That's not what you believe. And I think that that's what we're seeing as well, is there's a Mexican wave kind of thing going on of people's beliefs and values that have suddenly been trodden on, and they're screaming, but they're screaming in silence, which is basically going to hold them in that space for a long time. So what are we going to do about it? How do we deal with that? I think you've got an interesting way of dealing with this, because, or perspective is what I mean to say on this, because of the narcissist thing. Narcissism is an interesting area to be in when it comes to beliefs, values, and emotions, isn't it?
It is from the side of from the point of view of the victim, that you start off this relationship with certain values and beliefs, and by the time you come out of that relationship, and you've been through this roller coaster of emotions and triggers and things like gaslighting, you come out with a whole new set of beliefs and things that you didn't know were there before, and a whole load of new ones. And it causes a lot of angst, and there's PTSD as well, from the fallout of what happens to you, what happens to a woman's mind, what happens to anyone's mind if you get put through that, because it's not, of course, isolated to just women who are victims as well, men are too. As in what we can do about it, is that from a belief point of view?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, guys? Jump in.
Well, I think from a belief point of view, it's about being incredibly aware of ourselves, our own thoughts, our own feelings, and being very aware of what other people are doing. But that's me from a place of a huge amount of training and awareness, whereas somebody that goes through a narcissistic relationship, the damage to them can be absolutely extensive, and helping them actually get back on their feet and recognizing that actually it wasn't their fault. It's a reaction to what somebody else is constantly doing. And that's not easy work to achieve with anybody, because it really, I know narcissists, I've worked with them. And if I'm honest with you, they're the hardest. You know, they never ever come to therapy on their own, because they don't see that there's a problem to fix. So you've got people that their belief system is so strong, but in themselves, in a negative, toxic way, that it's contradictory to the normal, and I say normal in inverted commas, but the expectation of what beliefs actually are. Because their beliefs can be so detrimental to society, to the people around them. And I'm always conscious of memes that say, be exactly as you want to be. And my first thought is, as long as you're not a narcissist. And I can't help it, that's the way I think.
Or a psychopath.
A narcissist will look at that and go, yes, I am.
So, you know, it's a lot of work to work through the repercussions of that level of manipulation and gaslighting. It really, really is. So, you know, I commend you, Irene, on being aware of that, and having known many, it's damaging, and a lot of work to come out of it. So credit for credit's due, where you work at helping somebody come out of that.
Thank you.
Do you think that we are perhaps all being gaslit at the moment? And
That's what I was just going to say.
and the thing with gaslighting
going on, yes.
The thing with gaslighting is that, and with the whole narcissistic thing, is that from my experience, it's a very slow drip feed. So you don't actually see what's going on because it's very insidious and subtle. And then at some point you might suddenly wake up one day and go, oh,
how did we get here?
Where have I gone? I've lost me. What am I doing? And I think, to me, that's what's going on at the moment, is that there's some pretty carefully constructed gaslighting going on, and there's a lot of people in that drip feed, and that they're just kind of going, this is the way things are, and suddenly people are hopefully going to come to and go, oh, hang on.
Yeah,
welcome to room 101.
Gaslighting that we can all see from our viewpoints, from our experience, from our training, from our knowledge, our understanding, and also our belief systems. But for the vast majority who don't get a sense of self-awareness ever, they don't get how many times do you hear a teacher ask a child, how do you feel, as opposed to, what do you think you're doing?
Well, I can honestly say that in my entire school career, it was always, what do you think you're doing? Why aren't you doing that? Nobody ever asked me how I felt.
And that right there is the basis for the environment where gaslighting and grooming can take place. Because if you feel something is wrong, the chances are you will know that it's wrong. But if you don't know how to feel that something's right or wrong, you only think, then you are reliant on the outside world to tell you that you are right or you are wrong.
That's where the idea of normality becomes this issue, because normal is relative as much as weird is relative.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're brought up and what you're brought up in, the situation you're brought up in, that will be normal to you.
Yeah.
Eating
and then you will
dinner
look
at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Normal.
Yeah. Eating your dinner at 5 o'clock in the morning will be normal. Everybody else will go, eh? People who do night shift are all back to front and upside down. But actually, in Georgian times and pre-Georgian times as well, we only slept for short parts of the night and then would get up and go out and socialise and do things and use the day with catnaps in between. Mainly because we had to. But at the same time, that comes over from the amygdala as well, and always being constantly aware and awake, waiting for the big bad bear or saber-toothed tiger to come at the door of the cave. So you had to be kind of aware because, you know, something might happen. So we're triggered in that department. We're on a hair trigger for that kind of belief of we must look after ourselves. However, like you said, Dave, for a long time, we've been gifting that to someone else. Please look after me. I'll, you know, take this away from me. Put these people in authority over me and I will allow it. And then bit by bit, our beliefs have been formed around that.
And is that allowing conscious?
I think that part of it isn't conscious, because when it started, it was a case of almost feudally forced. As I say, we, in this country, particularly in the British Isles, we were a feudal system from the Dark Ages, from before the Dark Ages. It was those in power, everybody. This is how we ended up with the religions that we have. Basically, we had to, if our Lord and Master became Christian, everybody below on his land had to be a Christian, or they were chucked out their houses and chucked off their fields, and they didn't have anything to eat or what to do. They had to go and fight for them. They had all the even the childhood men, the boys from the age of 12 onwards, would be actually conscripted into the armies to go and fight the English, or the English to fight the Scots, or the Irish, or whoever it was on the menu that day. Yeah. So that has always been the case. And I think it's got this issue of you're in power, therefore I depend on you for my life. So because I depend on you for my life, for my survival, I am going to do what you tell me. It's almost a pack mentality, but not quite. Because in a pack, everybody is still an individual, but working towards a common goal. Like, get fed.
And it's very much survival. And we've gone past the point of needing the survival. And that comfort level has now become our physical comfort rather than our emotional or our psychological or our belief or our spiritual comfort.
So in our last 5 minutes, how can we help people with that? How are we going to let people know that we can help them with that future anxiety, the survival versus adaptation, whatever it is that they're feeling or know they're feeling? How are we going to let them recognize that they can come to us for that? Angela?
Being available, getting out there and actually telling folk that we exist and we're here and doing stuff like this. And I guess it's when we do talk to people, maybe gently advise that they don't sit on a 24-hour news channel.
Yeah, worst thing ever invented.
Gently advise or strongly advise.
Well, you know,
I'll let you decide what gently means.
This is on a spectrum for me because my gentle is rather like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, Leslie's gentle is very different to my gentle.
Yeah, I'm kind of like the Hulk on speed. But anyway.
No comment.
If you see me starting to turn green, don't go there. Irene, what would you say?
I think it has to be a collective. It's going to have to be a collective thing that's going to have to, be put out there to help people, because it's that thing that Dave says there about awareness, that we look to the outside. A lot of people look to the outside of ourselves for the answers. That's why social media is so big and the news is so big, because people are looking outside of themselves for the answers. So it's going to be needed for people like us to come to the forefront and raise that awareness that you need to look inside and that there are people who can help you with this. And that survival mode, we're all in that every day at the moment, because we don't know what's going to happen every single day. So right now we kind of are waiting for the tiger to come out of the woods, and we don't know when it's coming.
No, I think it's here. It's been stalking us for a while. Victoria?
Yeah, I think it's very much like what's been said, is just making people aware that we are here and we are here to help that anxiety. And like, I suppose, like, I'm just thinking as a drama therapist, literally just being like, I'm here to help, like, you know, but in a non-threatening way, you know. But also I would suggest as well, and this goes for, like, you know, us as professionals, like, and I'm just thinking about, you were saying, Leslie, like, people, like, we always relied on others for survival, and that is, I completely agree with that, but also the element of self-care, and that is such a big thing for us as professionals. And I've really noticed it as something that's going around and flying around on social media a lot in the past 5 years or so. And I would maybe just say to people, like, give yourself at least an hour to just you, like, don't look at the news, don't look at social media, do something that is just for you, whether it's have a nice bath or watch your favorite box set, you know, whatever it is for you to just switch off, because I think that's just so important, just have that little time for you and not feel guilty about it as well, because we do, I think it's in our culture, we feel guilty for taking time for ourselves, but just don't, like, you know.
That's another belief. Dave?
I think the professionals all know what they can do when somebody's in front of them. The challenge is that for over 40 years, the professions as a whole have told the general public that getting therapy, getting support is provided as a charity or through the NHS. And that's created the perception that you have to be in a really bad way in order to reach out for that support, because we're not charity case. it ain't that bad. I'll push it down the road until it gets to the point where I can't cope. But everything's fine. I'm still functioning, so I won't reach out. Thank you very much. I know you're there. I'll come when it's time. And what that's done is meant people are at the cliff edge before they reach out. And they reach out to services that have already been bottlenecked into wait lists for 6, 9, 12 months. And the public go, see, I knew there was no point. So it reinforces what they've already told themselves about pushing their own coping strategies to the 9th degree. As a profession, what we need to be doing, take the bottlenecks off. Let people know this is not about charity. This isn't about you not coping. This is about you relieving the pressure on your own time bombs. And we're here to relieve that pressure. So you can cope with more and more things as you go through life. Don't wait till the bomb's about to explode. There's 7 seconds on there and expect the rest of us to be able to defuse it. It's not going to happen that easy. We're not all James Bonds.
You stop reading my mind.
That's an interesting one as well, in the fact that if someone's probably pre-March, if someone had a cough, they would turn up at the doctor's surgery. So why does it take to be on that cliff edge mentally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever's going on, before you actually go and say, do you know what, can I have a hand?
Because medically they've been conditioned not to.
Yeah,
because they can't get the help when they reach out for it, so they don't bother. Yeah. Or they've been given the illusion that it's provided by charities, therefore therapy is charity. Why are they going to pay for something that's charity? They have to, as an individual, you have to be in a really bad place to put your hand up and say, okay, I'll accept charity right now.
I think it's also important to recognise the labels. You know, the word mental health. Mental is the worst word we can possibly have to advocate it's okay not to be okay. There isn't any one of us in this country, in the world right now, that can honestly say we're all doing 100% okay. Because it's impossible to be 100% okay. It's just impossible. Life goes up, life goes down. And with what's going on at the moment, nobody knows what's going on. So it's a case of really learning to rely on ourselves. And if I had my way, truthfully, the word mental would be absolutely replaced because it indicates mad. And let's be honest, I have never had anybody ever sit in front of me that's been remotely mad. They've had a reaction to trauma in their life, which is a completely normal reaction to the trauma that they've been through. But the stigma attached to it, and thank God it is changing from when I started, but we've still got a huge length of way to go with this. And it all starts with recognizing that it's okay not to be okay. Because it's illogical to be okay all the time. It's impossible. Life isn't okay all the time.
Well, yeah, we're not all on Valium yet. But at the same time, in Glasgow particularly, and the west of Scotland a little bit more, the word mental is really not a good thing to use. You know, that's mental, that is. That's just mental. You're mental. And that just means that you're totally off your box.
Yeah. And it's the same in Ireland. I mean, the suicide rates in Ireland, and that's my heritage despite the English accent, you know, they're huge because you've got a major Catholic religion in there. I'm lapsed Catholic as well, so I'm very aware of these. And it's all about you have to be really good or you have to be really bad, and it doesn't work. You know, people are suppressing their feelings so much throughout the generations that actually when it comes to accepting that it's okay not to be okay, just that one phrase, people don't know how to do that unless they're actually educated and taught and helped to understand that actually life is not a permanently blissful place. And right now the world is in the least blissful place than we've ever had in all our lifetimes. So even when I sit there and think about me separating my own thoughts about what's going on from the individual in front of me, every single therapist I know has to be almost extra conscious not to allow their own stuff to bleed into what's happening with the client. Because how many of us have been in a permanent position where we're in exactly the same situation? And obviously I'm referring to COVID there. You know, there's one thing every now and then having a similar situation in front of you that you might have gone through. There's another thing, every one of us in exactly the same situation, not having a clue what's coming, not knowing what information we're supposed to listen to, the contradictions. Soapbox, I'm hanging on to Sue. You mentioned soapbox. I'm suddenly going to be quiet. So I don't get online.
Well, I'm just going to borrow from a very well-known film, and I'm going to say, in the situation of needing your beliefs busted or bolstered, who are you going to call? Good night, everybody. Say bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.